When I read this statistic, it really shook me to my core. There's a startling rise in perfectionism in young adults. Over the past 40 years, a striking 33% increase over time in the level of unrealistic expectations placed on them by society and by well-meaning but pressuring parents.
So when we say well-meaning parents are maybe fostering this perfectionism in young people, you have to think back. When I was growing up in the 70s and the 80s, life was generally more affordable. Housing was more affordable, healthcare was more affordable, higher education was more affordable. There was slack in the system. So parents like mine could be a little bit more hands-off, be pretty assured that even with setbacks, even with a B- in AP calculus, like I got my senior year, that most likely I'd be able to replicate my own childhood as an adult, if not do even better than my own parents did. But modern parents are facing a different reality. We are seeing the first generation, the millennials, who on average are not doing as well as their parents. We've seen the crush of the middle class. And so we are absorbing these microeconomic forces and becoming, in the words of researchers, social conduits, passing those fears about the future onto our kids in the hopes of preparing them. But instead of preparing them, instead of trying to nurture them so that they could ride these unknown waves of the future, we are stressing them too much. We are giving them too much weight that's developmentally inappropriate. And the way that they are coping with it, perfectionism is a coping strategy. It's a maladaptive coping strategy, but it's a coping strategy. It's a way that a child copes with the excessive demands of a parent, because if they don't cope with them, it could lead to death, starvation, right? We rely on our adult caregivers to get us through this long period into self-sustaining adulthood. And so perfectionism becomes this strategy in order to live in the home and keep that connection healthy. But that perfectionism does not serve us. And so I think, again, perfectionism is passed down from parent to parent. It's a kind of family heirloom. And I think a way of thinking about perhaps well-meaning parents is that most likely they were parented by parents who were perfectionistic in certain ways. And so they've not necessarily rummaged through their psychological attics to really look at those messages and come to terms with them. And I would say to anyone thinking about being a parent or a parent today to really think about therapy. If you feel like you are really suffering from perfectionism, to unpack it, it's unpackable. You can take it apart, you can find healthier coping strategies, and therefore you could act as not only a force for giving your kids sort of the healthy fuel that they need to develop, but also alleviating your own unnecessary suffering.